Mix has had his first pro games, and he doesn't look that great. Now, the reason why I think Mix is being played so early after his release is because fundamentally he's not a very advanced agent. He has two, I don't know, brim/clove smokes, which aren't that inspiring, a stim beacon, which affects two players, and bots that can stun or heal, and then an ult that isn't that great either. We're going to talk about this later. This needs to be fixed. But a lot of players, content creators, and analysts also felt that this agent was kind of uninspiring. But at the same time, I think Mix was supposed to be an easy controller agent that ranked players can pick up and just play. That's an alternative to Clove, and that's why we saw so many Clove nerfs recently, right? And now the two teams that we're going to look at today are FlyQuest, and I recently think that they got signed, so congrats to them. They decided to play Mix in a double duelist Waylay Neon comp, which we're going to see a lot early on in this meta. He had 14 assists, 19 kills, and they did really well against this another tier 2 team. And you have Core and Pigeons, who I love their branding. I think they were a lot of fun. They decided to play Mix in a double controller, double duelist comp alongside a Sky. And now this game went to overtime when it was really close. But throughout the course of both of these games, you're going to notice that Mix really doesn't get a whole lot of value. And I don't think that teams are using him to his fullest potential yet. And I feel like if you're going to put a new agent in your comp, you should come up with new ideas. And I think that was a really frustrating part of watching these two squads use this new agent. And now I do think that both teams have a pretty solid idea of how Mix needs to be played. With his stim that's pretty strong and lasts a while, he can put it on Neon and Waylay so that they can make plays and have enough time to do so. Part where I think he has a lot of untapped potential are with his M pulses. He has a very long throw range to his little boom bots. When you throw these things, they go pretty far. I think similarly to a Sage Slow. And they can basically travel across the map, right? I just flung a bot from A to C and it landed right in the choke. Now in offense, this is a bit better because if you can land these things in major areas, right? Like if you can land one while your team's hitting C to hit maybe plat, and then maybe one like right here. Obviously, you don't want to give the enemy team a heal. But despite these being able to be broken, these still provide info, right? So because if this gets broken, this tells your Neon and Waylay that somebody's in this cubby. They dash up or slide up or warn up, whatever. They stun this cubby, slow this cubby. The other duelist follows up and destroys this person. And if it doesn't get broken, you know that that area is most likely clear because a person playing in this area would be stunned. Or if you don't like those options, you could choose to land an M pulse right outside of a smoke. And then what this is going to do is if you land it, obviously, outside of the smoke, is prevent anyone from trying to come out. Now, obviously, I think as time goes on, these things are going to be a little easier to break, but I think you get the idea, right? Now, when we watch these games, you're going to notice that these teams don't really do that. They don't really have lineups for these impulses. The stim doesn't even get used that often, and his ult, which is already weak in of itself, because all it does is knock back and deafen. It doesn't do anything else. I think both of these teams don't find a whole lot of value that they should out of Mix. So, if we take a look at this round, the offense are going C, Cypher's trying to anchor back site, Mix, Neon, and Sova are all coming over to try to help. Cypher decides to try and make a play in one of his cages or the mid-site smoke, and obviously can't find anything. Now, as you can see here, Mix is going to try and use his base quake for Sova's ult, try and keep the enemies like in place, because after the base quake is used and you're hit by it, you can't really move a whole lot. But you're going to notice that this combo doesn't work as well as you'd think. Now, maybe you could argue and say that this combo was mistimed, because as soon as the Sova ult goes off, you see the offense start to move out of the way, so then the base quake can't really plant those players. So you could say that this is a bit mistimed. But again, I think this comes down to the prep of running a new agent in a comp. I feel like things like this should be a lot more simpler to implement. And now, before I show you what a good ult looks like on the next round, I do want to talk a little bit about how you should be playing Mix on a map like Haven or Lotus, or I guess other maps that are pretty big like this. Now, in most of the game, FlyQuest put their Mix in mid, and this is so that he could smoke literally the entire map. And this is pretty nice. You could smoke C, you could smoke A. Smokes up. No problem whatsoever. The issue that I do have is that I mentioned earlier how you want to have lineups for these impulses, right? So you could help from across the map. And because you're playing on B, that option doesn't really exist. Like if you want to go help A, maybe sure you could bounce something off the wall like this. And that could, obviously you can land it up better, but it can land in time to stop and execute, right? But if you want to help C or garage, you're not really in a position to do so. Like I guess you could like lob something over site like this, but even then, this is going to take a while to land. And it's going to take a second for you to line up, to land, and then by that time, the enemy team is already just plowed over your side anchor, and then it just doesn't work out, right? So it makes sense to play towards B so you can smoke both sides if you're running a single controller, especially too because you can stim either side, right, at any given time. But I do think that these lineups that you should be having with these impulses, and not even just stun lineups, you want to have heal lineups as well, because let's say, for example, your team just got off a huge big A brawl, right? Like say they fought 3 people here, you're playing B and your sentinel's playing towards C. You want to be able to heal your teammates who just got finished with this A fight, but you also don't want to give up this B line, right? In order to throw some sort of lineup here that I talked about, you have to expose yourself to all a mid, and I think that is just really inefficient. But because he is your team's only controller, you do want to play him towards mid so your team has smokes on both sides. All right, so now I'm going to show you guys how the ult should be used, and I do think that Neon and Waylay do synergize with Mix's base weight probably the best out of any other agent in the game. So in this round, you see the offense are going A, the defense are obviously going to rotate and stack A as fast as they can, but you'll notice that as Neon is running up A long, she's able to actually push Fade back and dodge this initial Nightfall with that extra speed boost that she has, and then with it, she can even follow up off of Mix's base quake even better. So because Neon and Waylay are so fast, they really are the only ones that can follow up off of the only unique thing that Mix's base quake does, and it's that knockback, right? You'll see that as this base quake goes off, Neon gets shoved back, she can't pull out her gun fast enough, and she's just inaccurate and then gets absolutely destroyed. And now, if you look closely before that ult went off, you do see Fade running off site and Neon running on site, so maybe there is a bit of miscommunication between the defense there, but still, I do think that these movement duelists are the only ones that can actually follow up off of the knockback that Mix's ult provides. All right, and now we're actually going to see a good use of Mix's impulses, and I feel like this is going to be one of the few examples we're going to see in these two games. But as you can see, the offense are getting ready to go B, the defense are geared up to fight A pretty heavily, and as you can see, the offense, they slowly creep up, and as soon as they get to this B line, you're going to see that Mix uses his impulses as his duelists are entering to cut off this A link flood, while Waylay initially was posted up on or in this bubble with a shorty, right? So you can see that for that short duration, that impulse actually stalled 4 players from coming through this choke. Now, the issue that I have with this is that after this first impulse goes down, why not throw a second, right? You could throw it here, you could throw it on either side. I mean, even if it does get shot, I still think it provides extra time for your team to do things, like get out with their lives. You can see that as soon as this impulse wears off, that the defense flood in and absolutely just dumpster on the planner. So, and that raises the question, Mix is right here, why not just throw another bot so Nia can get out with her life, right? And you know, at one point it was a 3 versus 4, and then you could argue that a couple, you know, silly mistakes happened, like Whaley's using a saturate on the open, and then Mix is swinging before the spikes even tapped. So again, I think that Mix is still, I want to see more out of teams if they're going to run Mix like this. And now this one I think is the biggest example as to why you need impulses if you're going to run Mix in your team comms. So as you can see, so the offense obviously want to split C. They have Sova going up C long with his drone. These 3 are going to go through garage, and Cypher's kind of holding A, but more so mid in case anybody walks down, right? But the problem I have with this split is, why is Mix going towards garage where, like I mentioned previously, there isn't any room to throw his impulses to land on C? So yeah, obviously the offense couldn't go C, and I do think that having some stuns here would have helped. Maybe one landing backside, or one landing on logs, or even platform as Waylay's dashing backside and Neon sliding back out, I think would have helped us execute a lot. Now, the offense gets stuck behind, I guess, this backside line, and you're going to see that Mix has an extra impulse, and he used the first one to heal, and uses the second one to stun that Neon, but he can't really follow up off it as well. So this puts the offense into a 2 versus 2, and eventually they do win the round, but I do think it doesn't really have to do anything with Mix. And now we're going to go to Lotus, where I think this is probably Mix's best map, because he can help his duelists fight for a rebel control, which is obviously the biggest part of this map. You know, stuns, he's got the stim beacon, he's got his heals for after the fights, and I think that this is really where he thrives. But the weird thing about this whole game is that Ku doesn't really use any util to help. They don't use any Mix util to help this rebel fight at all, right? So this round's going to start, and my UI is blocking it off, but look at the bottom right and you'll see that Mix only uses a smoke. That's all he uses throughout this entire take. Now, I know his stun can be broken, but I mean, I guess Brimstone used his steam beacon, but I feel like if you're going to fight for Rubble, why not use anything to fight for Rubble that's not a deep smoke? You know? So earlier when I said that Mix is going to pair really well with Neons or Waylays because you can use his stim beacon to health and entry sights a lot better because it lasts longer than Brimstone, I'm talking more specifically this round. So at the start of the round, Ku lost a safe fight, so they decided to back off, try to find a lurk up B. Obviously that didn't work, and you're going to see the offense group up towards C, notice this Vice wall, know that Vice is playing on site, and she's going to get run over. So as you can see, Vice gets run down so hard by this Neon that she isn't even able to use her thorns, right? The stim beacon just makes Neon move so so much faster and be able to pull out her gun so much quicker that Vice doesn't even have the time to use her utility to like help her take sight. Like she's too busy trying to hold spawn to make sure that she doesn't die, right? So I think that when you pair that combat stim with duelists who can take advantage of that faster pullout time or faster movement, I think that's where we're going to see Mix thrive. And I do think that Ku does have a good comp. It's just that I think that it could use a little bit more time in the oven. All right, and then I hate Mix's ult. I hate his entire kit. I feel like it's uninspired, so I want to show another round where it doesn't really work a whole lot, or it doesn't work very well. So you can see Ku are fighting A, the defense are fighting A as well. It's just a huge rubble mound. You guys know how this works. But you're going to see that the offense tend to back off. Mix uses his ult, but it's just way too late, right? Let me rewind that. So like, I feel like if you're going to use Mix's ult, you need to position in a way to like beat the defense back. And I feel like using it from where he's at, like you see he pulls it out initially, getting ready to use it, but he realizes that he's just going to blast his own team. So he puts it away. But by the time his team actually gets in a position for that ult to find value, it's just way too late. Neon's already out, Brim's already getting kills, Neon gets a kill. Like it's just a waste. But like, I feel like if you're going to add an agent to your team comps like this, there has to be a little bit of thought behind it, because I mean, like, I know I'm doing this live on video, but when I watch that round live on my Twitch streams, but by the way, I am trying to stream a ton more, being watch parties, ranked games, live breakdowns, a whole bunch of stuff. So if you're interested in seeing me break stuff down live, go check out my Twitch. That's twitch.tv/teets or teetsTV, and that's going to be in the description. And stream, I literally said, why not just at the start of the round move over and just do this? Because your team can come out, like, right, they can leak out. This ult is going to push the defense back. Like, they literally cannot cross this line as soon as the barrier drops. Like, it is impossible, right? So why not just, instead of starting here where you're going to destroy your whole team, why not just move over 5 feet and just do it from here, right? And then, like, I know his ult doesn't do a whole lot, but like, at least it physically knocks them back so they can't take rubble, right? So I don't know. I just think his kit's pretty uninspired, but I do think teams are starting to get the right idea of how to use him. And now for those of you who are wondering how you can pilot a team comp like this without a sentinel, basically you just have to be really proactive. Like, your team cannot stop moving. You can't get stagnant, because if you decide to just stack 3B and then the enemy team goes C, like you're about to see here, and you decide just to rotate through spawn, you're going to get destroyed, right? So to start this round, you're going to see that the offense notice that there's a heavy A fight happening, so they decide to push up C. Prowler sees nothing. Brim smokes the entrance, and you're going to notice that eventually the defense work out that core are going C. So you see the smoke, you see where they jump in, the paranoia, the recon, and the defense obviously hear all this. So that's what triggers this 3-person push down C. Now, when you're retaking on Lotus, you don't normally want to just funnel in through one choke point, and you can see that they're mainly going to be coming through this one if they come through door and mound, but you're going to see them break off in a minute to also retake through waterfall. Now, Skye on her own does need to play carefully, because without a sentinel, they don't really know how far the offense are pushed up, and if she dies, the defense lose just so much map control. So she stays alive, these two push up, these two open the door at the same time, and you're about to see a pretty clean retake. Now, I do think that the funniest part about this whole retake, about this final round of this video, is that, it's supposed to be a mixed video, but he only has a sheriff. Like, he doesn't even use any of his new abilities or anything, right? So buying a sheriff on pistol isn't bad necessarily either, especially when you have Brimstone to be your main smoker. But I just think it's funny that teams really aren't using Mix to his full potential yet.